Hello and welcome to my channel. I am Zodiac Bandit, and today we have some spoilers. There's always spoilers. Spoilers. I mean, we're getting toward the end of the campaign anyway, so most of you likely have been caught up in watching, but spoilers, just in case. Before I get started with the video, I do want to just say this isn't going to be like a super heavily edited video. I am a little bit under the weather, so I'd rather not look at the screen and do a bunch of editing, so it's just going to be a single image, which is usually the thumbnail, and then you're going to have to hear my annoying voice over some music. So, sorry if you want some heavy editing or something like that, but, you know, feeling a little ill right now. So, thanks for understanding. After both Vox Machina and the Mighty Nine finished up their respective fights, one against the Weave Mine and the other at the Malleus Key, the question of, is the fight between Ludinus Deleth and the Bell's Hells really going to be the end of Campaign 3? The fight this entire campaign has led up to, and it will decide if this is truly the end of the campaign, the end of Exandria as we know it, and possibly the end of D&D as the full-time campaign game for Critical Role. However, today I do just want to focus on if this is going to be the end of the campaign, as the other two discussions are a bit more in-depth and go into more real-world stuff, and I'd rather not touch upon that today. That'll be a later discussion for another day. But to me, there are three possible outcomes for this fight that will lead one way or the other. So I'm going to talk about each of these in the order that I believe is to be most likely to then least likely. And I will be starting off with the Bell's Hells survive this fight and potentially kill Ludinus, but Predathos is released. This is the most likely outcome in my opinion, and it continues the campaign. So this will lead to one of two. It could spiral into infinite, but these are the two that I see being the most likely. It'll lead to two things. If the Bell's Hells all live, they will regroup on Exandria, and A, will let Predathos run amok and sort of run the gods off, if that is possible or not, or they will look for a new sort of power or way to kill Predathos and stop it from killing the gods. To me, this might lead to another little mini arc, much like what Vox Machina went through to sort of gain the favor of the gods and then, you know, get the divine Dramels and to be able to seal away Vecna. But to me, instead of them going to the gods to get power, because they've already done that a little bit, I think they can look for more Titan shards. Because earlier in this campaign, they sort of suggested the idea of maybe somehow bringing back the Titans in some sort of light, and they've done that a little bit with Ashen and Fern, but maybe they could go and expand upon that a little bit more with other characters, and sort of have this team be like the representation for the Titans, and Vox Machina be the representation for the gods. And I think that would be a lot of fun. This one is if most of the Bell's Hells survive, if not all of them, which who knows how that's going to go, we don't, but I do think the idea of them going after Titan shards would be really fun and really interesting to take on a god killer, because they would be Titans instead of gods, which I think would be, you know, enough to swing the fight. But that was just in case all of the Bell's Hells survive. But what if only a handful of them survive, maybe 4? I could see this potentially leading into all 3 teams, Vox Machina, Mighty Nine, and what remains of the Bell's Hells sort of forming one big group of 8, while the others sort of go off and do other problems, while the big team of 8 deal with Predathos and how to defeat it. I could see it going very similarly, where they do go after like Titan shards, but with different characters this time. Instead of it just being the Bell's Hells, it's going to be a handful of characters from a handful of the different teams, right? So it depends on who dies, that way they can replace their character with whoever. I think, you know, there's no way in trying to predict who would replace who, because we don't know who's going to die or not. So simply put, this is literally just, if half of the team dies and the rest survive and Predathos is released, I could see them teaming up with a handful of members from both Vox Machina and the Mighty Nine, which I think would be really fun and would also continue the campaign in, you know, a seek of power of however they can, which I think would be really fun. So the next potential outcome, which is somewhere in the middle of the road of likelihood that I think is possible, which is the Bell's Hells win outright and Predathos is not released. This just straight up ends the campaign, because there will be no more danger. There's no worry about anything happening, because they will have won. There won't be any threat. Ludinus will be gone. Predathos is sealed away. Breus decides not to release Predathos. You know, just an end of the campaign. Realistically, this would be it. There would be no issues. Ira doesn't release it. Imogen's mother might not be around to release it. So realistically, if Ludinus dies in the fight and Predathos isn't released, the campaign ends, and we get to have a happy ending for these characters. No one dies. The world stays mostly the same. You know, who knows after that, realistically, because there won't be that big of a change. And Campaign 4 might have to still reflect what it looks like to be in Exandria in the way that it is currently, and won't have to change all that much. So, as it stands, this is, to me, the one that's 50-50. Because if they're able to win, because level 15, in my opinion, which is what the Bell's Hells are currently, is like in that area of really fun and really easy to balance for a fight, because, you know, there's a lot of fun abilities that they have, but nothing like too stupidly insane that like would break the game, or at least nothing like too game breaking that they have too many of, if that makes sense. So realistically, that level 10 to level 15 area is the best D&D. So for me, where they sit right now, it's going to be the easiest for Matt to balance, and it'll be a very tough fight, but a very fun fight. So hopefully this is a possibility where they can survive and nothing gets released. But who knows? Who knows? But this one straight up ends the campaign because there will be no threat. So like this episode happens, then they'll do a wrap up episode like where they all go their separate ways and do their own things in life, or maybe they don't, we don't know. But that's just it. It'll be like the end of campaign 2 where everyone is happy, healthy, and they're able to go on with the rest of their existence. And lastly is the least likely outcome in my opinion, and that is the Bell's Hells lose. Ludinus wins the fight, the Bell's Hells are all dead, and Predathos is released. This to me is the most unlikely outcome. I get the feeling that at least a handful of them will survive and will be able to escape through whatever means they can, and that, you know, this isn't going to be the most likely. But if it does happen, I can see it going one of two ways. One, the campaign ends, and Matt says, we'll pick this up in campaign 4 with Daggerheart, and it'll be 1,000 years in the future, and, you know, the gods are all different, like new people have risen to power, and there's new gods, or there's new people in positions of power. Exandria looks different because it's no longer D&D Exandria, it's now Daggerheart Exandria, and that sort of thing, right? It skips to 1,000 years later, and the gods have all been changed and rearranged because they ran off, they were killed, Predathos left a scar on the world that has effectively changed everything. That's one outcome of them potentially losing. The other outcome is, instead of the game ending, Matt says, okay, so now we have a choice. Do you guys want to play as Vox Machina and try to fight it? Do you guys want to play as the Mighty Nine and try to fight it? Or do you want the two groups to come together and try to fight it? Which I think would be super fun. If that were to happen and like the Bell's Hells were to be just eliminated, having certain members of Vox Machina and certain members of the Mighty Nine work together to potentially fight Predathos would be a lot of fun, and I think would be really cool. Maybe fuck it. Maybe they just both play, you know, they play both characters. Both of their characters across the whole thing, which would mean Robbie only has one, but, you know, it would still be a lot of fun. Maybe Robbie would pick up Essek at that point, and who knows. But realistically, I could see them each playing two characters and fighting off Predathos. So it's like, you know, 16 people fighting against Predathos. That'd be a lot of fun. I kind of hope that happens now. I don't hope that happens, but I do hope that happens. I would love to see like an alternate reality thing, because they seem to be okay with the idea of like doing alternate reality stuff now. Because one of the one shots they said was, you know, that they're going to be doing next year is like a one where we get to vote for characters, and it's not like canon or anything like that. So I would love to see something like this where they have 16 characters fighting Predathos. I think that'd be fun. It would be a fucking mess combat wise, but it would be fun. So realistically, do I think this is going to be the end of the campaign? No, I don't think the campaign will end here. I think the most likely outcome is that the Bell's Hells will survive, but Predathos will be released. Therefore, they have to continue doing something in the attempt to defeat Predathos. Now, if they elect to let Predathos sort of run the gods off, I do still think there is going to be some sort of conflict, because there are definitely going to be characters who want to rise up. Like, you know, good old Asmodeus, who's just sitting in the corner waiting for Breus to say, hey, time to rumble, right? So realistically, there is still conflict that sort of lies beneath everything if Predathos is to be released and, you know, runs the gods off and he just fucks off, right? If Predathos truly is just going to eat the gods and he leaves Exandria alone, there is still an issue, you know, sitting around with certain characters, with specifically Asmodeus. Maybe even the Unseelie Court is looking to get some fucking revenge on some people who fucked them over not too long ago, who took away their potential of, you know, good control and being free from whatever the hell they want to be free from, right? So realistically, if Predathos is released and the Bell's Hells elect to do nothing, there is still a conflict that can arise afterwards. The action, or the consequences to their actions is very much a possibility of what can happen if they don't fight off Predathos, which I think could lead to 2 very interesting arcs. One, the one arc where they go and collect stuff to fight Predathos, to me would be very interesting. We get to learn more about the Titans, which would be really cool. Maybe that's where we go and see more of Isilra. I just get the feeling that a lot of them are tied to Isilra for some reason, but we get to see more of like the wilderness of Isilra for a couple episodes, and then they get the shards. Maybe they go back to the Shattered Teeth a little bit, who knows. But then the other side of that coin is they have to deal with Asmodeus and Breus, and they have to deal with the Unseelie Court again, stuff like that. Because there has been small things like that throughout this campaign that have sort of lingered under the surface. So realistically, if Predathos is released, there's still a bunch of shit that needs to happen. And I'm very curious how that would go. And I'm curious, what do you guys think? Do you think they're going to die and they get to play as Vox Machina and the Mighty Nine again? Or do you think that sort of stuff is now done, where they get to just chill? I do want to point out, and somebody else pointed this out very recently on I think on the last recap, which was the members of the Mighty Nine said to the Bells Hell that they would be willing to sort of reinforce them if they need to. So what do you think of the idea of, like, as this fight starts to go poorly for the Bells Hells, the Mighty Nine, like 2 members of the Mighty Nine show up? And for me, those members would be Bo and Caleb, because they're the 2 who are like the most tied to lewdness. So for me, it makes the most sense that they would show up. Now, some people want like a Jester to show up because she's a cleric, and that would be very helpful for them. But I get the feeling that like lewdness versus 16 characters isn't going to work, because I don't think lewdness quite has the strength that like this like god-killing force of Predathos does. So realistically, for me, as far as I can tell, I would like to see just Bo and Caleb show up, because this would mean the other group gets to like go to like the back door, and they can leave and go back to Exandria, while these 2, there is still a teleporter here, right? Like Caleb is a teleporter, so it's not a big deal for him to like grab a handful of people and teleport. So I think the number of people he can teleport is 9. It might be 10, but it might be 9, which might be a bit sketchy, because there's 8 members of the Bells Hells and 2 members that would be going with him, like himself and Bo. So if they try to teleport out, that could be dangerous and not be very great. But unless Chetney still has like some charges on the staff, maybe he can teleport some people out. I don't know. I'm just putting ideas out there that would be fun, that could sound fun, stuff like that. But anyway, let me know what you guys think. Do you think this is the end of the campaign, or are we going to get some more episodes after this? Let's hit somewhere in like 125 area. That sounds about right to me. But anyway, I will see you guys on Friday for the recap of episode 117 of Campaign 3. Peace.